We're so fortunate to have back with us today Loretta Downs, all the way from Chicago, recently. Oh, Just Bury Me in the Backyard, Part 2, because last year, some of you may remember Part 1. Loretta returns to Open Circle with insights on the current worldwide social movement that is changing the ways we conclude our lives. She will share her beliefs on the miracle of transformation and will provide suggestions for approaching the finale with grace and serenity. Loretta Downs, M.A., is a nationally recognized speaker and writer on the subject of supporting the end of life. She's been a companion to the dying for more than 20 years with AIDS patients, family, friends, hospice patients, and nursing home residents. She's past president of the Chicago End-of-Life Care Coalition and a member of the American Society on Aging. She raises monarch butterflies in her award-winning garden. So let us welcome Loretta Downs.
Thanks, Jim, for having me again, and all the many people that I needed help from to get here today. I tell you, yes, I came in from Chicago. Actually, I had a week on the beach in Puerto Vallarta, which was great. Sunscreen tan. And as soon as I got off the plane, my teeth stopped chattering, and my blood pressure went down. You know, and I'm so. I mean, I just love being. It's my fourth winter. I'm more aware, I speak to a lot of groups, and I'm more aware when I'm facing this group than I am with many of how many happy-looking and healthy-looking people I'm standing in front of. I mean, you are the Olympians of aging. You know, those of us who get out of Dodge and live our lives the way we choose to live our lives and make some very big choices to transform everything we thought we wanted for our futures, right? Look at how many places we've come from. So being here is really amazing. And since I was here last year, something very big happened in my life. I turned 65. And according to Cheap Flights, when I filled out my tickets for this, I'd never got anything from them before. I had to fill out a profile, and they had the age. You know, check you're here, check you're there. Well, the last checkbox was 65. There wasn't anything else. So I figure, according to Cheap Flights, which is an oxymoron, that I'm officially old. So here I am. I'm so happy to be there. Be old. It feels good. You know, I didn't get here easily, right? We walked a lot of miles to get here. This is a great time for being older, too. Oh, my God. There's this whole movement, senior housing. It's one of the biggest investments that's going on right now. Nursing homes are not what they used to be. They're really creating wonderful communities of support in long-term care. I work with a lot of long-term care businesses, and the chrysalis room that I've talked about having in long-term care facilities, they're putting them in so people can keep vigil with loved ones at the end of life and they don't have to go to the hospital. There are wonderful things happening for us, and it includes the end of life. And I know this is an uncomfortable subject. There are a lot of things. I could talk about sex more easily and we wouldn't be as embarrassed. But death, whoa. Or like Woody Allen said, I know I'm going to die. I just don't want to be there when it happens. And besides the jokes, Margaret Farms, there aren't a lot of death jokes. We need to make some more, like we're making aging jokes. And so there is an enormous international social movement going on, very much like the birth movement 50 years ago, to transform the way we are experiencing the end of our lives. Because what happened after World War II, we medicalized dying. We medicalized being sick. Before that, people, we died in the arms of our loved ones, in our homes, surrounded by comfort care and chicken soup and warm towels. And what's happening now in the contemporary end-of-life experience, we're dying in ICUs, hooked up to machinery that most of us wouldn't want to be happening to us. And this worldwide movement is seeking very strongly to change that. And we're all part of that. In fact, at the end of this talk, which is only going to last another half an hour, you are all going to be ambassadors and experts in improving end-of-life care. How's that sound? Yeah, good. Quick lesson here. So The first thing that's being advocated is that we prepare. Well, you can't prepare if you don't accept the fact that you're going to die. And that seems to be one of the biggest obstacles we have. You know, I go up to people and I say, I'm 65. And they go, oh, you don't look 65. And I say, well, what does 65 look like? It looks like a lot of things. How many of you are 65? Looks like a lot of things, right? How many of you are 85? No, come on. Over 85? Oh, so we have a lot of people 65 to 85. Well, okay. We all need teachers and role models. This is an important thing that this community provides to each other. We, the 65s, we need to be looking up to the people who are doing such a good job of aging with grace and courage, because it does take courage. And although I can be very positive about supporting the end of life, I don't want to die. I really don't want to. And I don't know what I'm going to be like when I get there, when that day comes or that week comes. I don't know. I think I'm going to be pretty ready for it. I think I'm going to be comfortable. Planning on it. I'm preparing for it. I think like having dinner for 10 people. What happens if you don't plan ahead? Oh my God. Not a good feeling, right? What happens if you buy size 10 clothes when you're a size 2 or 20? Not good planning. So this whole experience that's happening to transform the way we are facing the end of our lives hinges around acceptance instead of denial. Hey, you know. And even though I'd been supporting a lot of people for a lot of years, I didn't identify with it either until the Thanksgiving after my mother died. And I was sitting at the table. There were 12 of us, from my 22-year-old godson on his way to Iraq with the Marines, down to my 92-year-old Aunt Vera, who was my mother's last sibling of 5 to be surviving. And in this household, the grace is the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And as he finished, I realized, oh my goodness, one of us at this table will be the first to die, and one will be the last. And I can't change that. And then I realized I could be either first or last. There was nothing to stop that, you know. It happens. It's a little roulette game, right? And I started getting very, very uncomfortable, and the food came in front of me, and I thought, oh, come back into the present moment, like our meditation this morning. And I ate what was in front of me and let it go. But driving home, oh my gosh. You know, now the highways all have these signs, how many deaths in Illinois this year. And every time there was like 10 more, and I thought it could be me. And what would happen to my loved ones if that happened and I hadn't made any preparations? And worse, what if I didn't die? What if I were just badly injured and in life support somewhere? So that brought it up to here like, okay, if I can accept this, I can do something about it. Isn't that amazing? Because if we don't accept something, we can't do anything about it. So this is one of 7 practices I want to share with you today. And I didn't make these up. I've had a lot of teachers, and most of my teachers are dead. It's a great way to learn how to live. In fact, Socrates said that. When you learn how to die, you will learn how to live. And it's very true. How many of you have lost someone you love in the past year? In the past 2 years? How many of you think you're going to lose somebody you love this year? I know I will. Yeah. So this acceptance is something we need to take advantage when we have opportunity to, because it takes us to the next step, which is being able to prepare and plan. And right now there's an enormous amount of activity on advanced healthcare planning. In fact, you won't believe this, but in 2008, the country of Mexico, 2009, established a protocol, a plan for healthcare directives, healthcare procedures. And as of this December, they have established a law that's requiring hospitals to offer palliative care to people who are known to be dying in 6 months or less, and to encourage people to be able to get this care at home. This is huge, huge. and also to provide appropriate medications. And part of the procedures is to teach healthcare professionals to provide palliative care. That is enormous, because it's not what's happening. When we medicalize the end of life, we came up with this long list of treatments that we could get that are there. And when we're not ready and someone says, oh, this isn't working, we can fix it with this. And in the part of preparing ahead with advanced care directives, there's, of course, you need to do some legal stuff with your financial things. We all have stories of people who died without having their business things in order, and how complicated it got for their families. But it's even more complicated with health care directives, because most of us at the end of our lives aren't communicating clearly or well or at all. I mean, 90% of the people who get to an ICU are not communicating, and their families are asked by the doctors, well, what do you want us to do? Have any of you been in that situation? Yeah, horrible. Families who have been surrogate decision makers on end-of-life decisions report it being like they have post-traumatic stress syndrome. It's the hardest thing they ever did. It was traumatic. We can avoid that for our loved ones. And there are all kinds of forms. I'm going to give you, there's a handout for later that will have information where you can find all this, and at the end of the talk I'll give you more details on that. But planning ahead is so important because, first of all, we're all very autonomous people, right? We're making decisions for ourselves. That's what this is all about. And being here, I'm taking up and leaving. It always amazes me how many kids leave home, but when the parents leave home, it's like scandalous, right? Your parents left you? That doesn't happen. I don't have kids. I watched my big sister and brother have kids, and I thought, whoa, that looks scary. I think I'll just borrow other people's kids. It's been very successful. So, this whole transformation and end of life is very much like the old birth movement was. Today, parents have all kinds of choices in birth. I mean, they can have home births, they can have doulas and midwives and water births, and hospitals provide these amazingly beautiful suites for delivery now. And that's what we want to see happening at the end of our lives. We want to have that kind of support like we do for birth, including planning ahead for it. And there are all kinds of advanced directives. This is my favorite one. Have any of you seen the 5 Wishes? Okay, you can get it online. Because it asks you things that you might not consider. And most importantly, we need to normalize death and dying. When I was 10 years old, my Uncle Louie and Aunt Andrea retired to Hot Springs, Arkansas, which used to be the Ahihique of America. And we went to visit them, and I remember him driving us through town, and he said, well, this is our grocery store, and this is our dry cleaners, and this is where we're going to be waked, and this is where we're going to be buried. It was normal. We don't talk about that. And you know what happens to us? We're sick for a long time, and then when we die, our kids say, oh my God, he died suddenly after a long illness. What is that? In fact, the average 65-year-old takes 5 prescription drugs. We are able to live through so many things that used to kill our grandparents quickly. We are so lucky. It's true, 5 prescription drugs. It's like a passage. Medicare, prescription drug plan. It's a good thing. So the 5 wishes. Who do you want to speak for you if you can't speak for yourself? Important relationship. I thought my sister would be the person to ask. So I said to her, I'm preparing this, would you do that? And she said, oh, Loretta, you're my baby sister. I don't want you to ever die. I said, you can't be my power of attorney, because that's not how this works. I need somebody who's going to stand up to the doctors and who's going to say she didn't want this, she does want that. And right now there's the opportunity. We all have this. We can say no to any medical treatment, or we can limit it. Well, let's give it a try and see how it works. Like dialysis, there's a perfect one. Let's talk about that. You got to have dialysis. Of course you can have dialysis. Oh, this doesn't feel good, doesn't work. I think I'm going to stop it. And your family is going to go bonkers. Say, what do you mean you can't do that? And then you stop and you get support and your family gets on your side and it's your choice. But if we're not talking about these things, no one's prepared. And none of the people who love you want you to die. I don't want you to go across the street sometimes. Stay right there with me. So if we're not talking about this, if we're not preparing our loved ones, we're not helping ourselves. And we're certainly not helping them. You know, my dad used to say, oh, just bury me in the backyard when the subject of dying came up. That's where I got the title. Thanks, Dad. Yeah, how many of you have heard something like that? Put me in the trash. Yeah, right. Well, when my dad died, you know what? He suffered much more, and so did we, because we've never talked about it. If he had said, and we had Uncle Louie's funeral, you know, let's sit down and talk about this. One day I have to leave you. I better leave you before you leave me. And how many of you have lost children here? Yeah. Not the way we anticipate life to work. And that's not something you can prepare, but you can prepare your children and your loved ones for your own departure. Like when you left for wherever you left to come here, and when you leave and go back. Yes, preparation. The second thing, the kind of medical treatment you want or don't want. How comfortable you want to be. Did you ever think about that? I've written in mine, I want socks on my feet. Keep my glasses on my face. No television on anywhere near me. Only classical music. No rock and roll, I say. I am old. And how I want people to treat me. I really don't mind if you say the rosary around me, because I know a lot of my people want to say the rosary around me, but I'm not into a lot of praying. That's in writing. I don't want that. I want warm cloths, not cold ones. I would like someone to do my nails and tweeze my chin hairs. I put that all in writing. That's how I want to be. And what I want my loved ones to know, there are 4 things we have to say to each other, and we don't do it often enough, and very often we wait till the end of life, because the end of life is very transformative. It's a tremendous opportunity to grow and change. And we need to say to each other, of course I love you. It's not always that easy. We need to say to each other, I'm sorry for what I did to you. And that takes a lot of courage. We need to say, I forgive you for what you did to me. And that takes a lot of humility. And we need to say, thank you for being in my life. Thank you for everything you've given me, before we say goodbye. And very often we wait until we know someone's dying before we can get all of those things out, or when we're dying and we feel we need to do it. And sometimes we don't get to do that. My dad died in the hospital, and I walked out in the morning, and if I knew what I knew now, I would have never left. But the doctors, no one said he was even dying, let alone that he was going to die within hours. And I walked out, and 1991 still affects me. And I got a call. I just went to the office and I got a call from my secretary. Your mother just called. Your dad died. So I went back to the hospital, and she was sitting there, and she was so funny. She said, "Oh, honey, he's still warm." And it's the first time I'd seen a dead body before it was embalmed. It's like, but it was the most natural thing in the world to sit next to her on the bed and hold her hand and hold Daddy's hand. It was so natural. You know, we are really interconnected. And in our ferocious effort to be independent people, to be autonomous people, to make all of our own decisions, we are forgetting how connected we are and how connected we need to be. You know, and after you prepare, sharing the journey with people who are dying and who are living sickness in the end of their lives is so important. It's a privilege to do that. Where are you going to learn how to die if you're not being with people who are doing it? Yes. I know a lot of doctors who've never seen someone dying. They tinker, they fix, like there's something broken. Dying isn't broken. In fact, it's an incredible opening. They tinker, they fix, and they leave us, many of them. You know, being a companion to somebody, serving, And this community has a unique setup here. You are so interconnected. First of all, you have nature, which humans need so desperately to really be human and to be feeling alive. God, I feel alive here. I feel alive. I feel really alive. That's why you're here, right? Duh. And not wherever we started. There is an interconnectedness in this community that needs to be tapped into. The idea of serving each other, of companioning each other, of being present for each other is so available here. And that's part of the social movement that's happening too, where villages are being created in the United States so people can live in their own houses longer, to help each other, to provide volunteer services for each other, to provide companionship and things that are needed, and trustworthy helpers. You know, I think being called a companion is a noble pursuit, just like being a midwife or a doctor or a lawyer. Those are all important things to do. And this interconnectivity is something so important for us as we're aging to tap into. You know, the graphs all show you going downhill, right? I don't believe that. I believe we go uphill. And there's another thing that ascends. Margaret said, I raise monarch butterflies. Has anyone ever done that? Raise monarch? They're doing it in schools now. You know, they're in trouble, the monarchs. We need to plant milkweed. Tell your friends up north, plant milkweed. Well, I raise them in my kitchen in boxes, and they start out as little bitty eggs, like everything seems to, seed egg, and then they grow into, they eat the milkweed leaf, and they grow into these big chubby caterpillars in about 10 days, and one day they stop eating, like everything does before it dies. Stops eating. The caterpillar stops eating, and it looks for a place to be comfortable, you know? And it finds outside in nature under a leaf. In my house, it's in a big bug box, and it'll hang there upside down for a day and a half, like programmed. And the skin behind its head splits and starts to move up its body, and the caterpillar is dying. Little skin's going up to the top, and what you're starting to see is the chrysalis emerging, and it's transforming into another form, and eventually the skin falls off and it stops shaking around. It knows it's free of its caterpillar skin. And for another 10 days, it looks like nothing's happening in this little chrysalis. But inside, the transformation to the butterfly is happening. You think nothing's going on. It's kind of like us too. And you know, when you're on your deathbed and you're just still and quiet and everybody around you's not knowing what to do, and some of them know to sit down and do nothing but hold your hand or wipe your brow or moisten your mouth. You're in this chrysalis state, trying to change. And one morning, it always happens in the morning with the butterflies, the little door opens on the chrysalis and emerges this tiny little wrinkled winged butterfly with a big body, and it pumps fluid out of its body and the wings pull out like this. And it dries for a few hours, and I take it outside and I'll go on my finger like a bird. And kind of get used to what its new form is. And then it flies up. And I look at that and I try to think about this. What could that first flight feel like? Just a little while before it was in this chrysalis. And it's the caterpillar. It's the same thing, you know, like us. We're babies. We're teenagers. We're old people, you know, and we're changing. And I think that's what death feels like. If there is a feeling to death, I think it's that kind of first flight. And I meditate on this. I think about one day I'm going to die, and I'm going to stretch my wings and fly. I grew up Catholic. There's some real scary things that happen after you die in that program. And then I became a Buddhist, and let me tell you, they've got these deities that'll scare the death out of you. You gotta go through this bardo and that bardo. So I figured there are a lot of ideas I could grab onto about what happens when I die. I like this one, and I'm gonna give it to you. Say this: one day I will die. One day I will die. And I will stretch my wings and fly. And I will stretch my wings and fly. We will. And in this room, one of us will be the first and one will be the last. And the one who's the last needs to develop different skills than the one who's the first. Because those of us who are the last, like many people, my mom was 94. She let a lot of people go. We need different skills. We need to be able to serve the people we love and to help them and their loved ones letting go, because that's another practice. Letting go. Oh my goodness. Hard thing to do, right? How about your closets and your drawers? And your garages? Huh? Talk about not letting go of something. Not letting go. That's where you start practicing. Because one day, there's that letting go. I can hardly see without my glasses. As of this year, it's like scary. I'm carrying spares. I'm going to put a pair in my car. I'm having to let go of that. I used to be a runner. Can't run anymore. I'm a gardener. I can't lift those bags anymore because my back's degenerating. I look good out here, but stuff's going on inside. Well, there's some things outside going on too. Yeah, wow, 65's been interesting. So letting go, because eventually, not only are you going to let go of a lot of ability, you might have to let go of your mind. How's that? There's another thing we're dealing with today. One of my dearest friends and an amazing spiritual teacher, Karen Miles, discovered this year that she has a form of dementia that's going to change her life. And in the times we've talked, she's an amazing teacher. And I would encourage all of you to let her teach you, because she's facing this with amazing grace and ownership and optimism and positivity, and she's a delight to be with and listen to. We all need to be facing our challenges like that. Depression it's something the elderly are facing, and if we don't get our attitude shifted before we're facing all of these losses, it's going to be harder to dig out of it. So now that you're letting go of things, give yourself permission to grieve. We don't do that, When my dad died, I went on the Martini Grief Program. Well, there was no one who could really talk to. Oh, your dad died. See you later. Or your wife died. Or your husband. We don't know how to talk to each other, so we often grieve alone. And it makes it so much more difficult to process, because it is a process. It's an ongoing thing. And it does transform. We've all been there for something. I've grieved the loss of a ring for a long time. But it's good practice to honor the fact that we're grieving and to taste it and to cry. Crying's like peeing. You have to do it or it backs up. It causes all kinds of problems. All kinds of problems. So allow ourselves to create rituals. We have lost some of the most important rituals that sustained our grandparents and their grandparents and their grandparents. We have lost our ancestral rituals that are so important in living and dying and grieving. Create some. Create some in your family. Really, think about this. I was talking about the going up thing, going down. I think advanced age is an opportunity for us to ascend, to develop the spiritual sense of who we are and who we are in the world, and really get better, while our bodies are not getting better. But that's I just don't like that downward spiral, that thing. Ugh. No, it's definitely up. I want you to grab onto that, because we have power. There are a lot of us now, and I've never been this close to death as I am today. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I've never been 65 and a half before, and I'm certainly closer to whatever the end of my life is coming. I'm not dwelling on that, but I'm living better than I've ever lived. And I'm not sweating the small stuff anymore, really. When you think about how much time you may not have, what's important today? So when you're done with it blew away. Okay, out of my head. We got the healing grief, and then gratitude. Gratitude. What's gratitude? Thankfulness. Yeah. Well, they're doing scientific studies that somebody's paying for on gratitude and thankfulness. And guess what? People who practice gratitude, write it down every day, once a day. Oh, I'm grateful for this today. Wake up. Oh, I'm grateful. I'm breathing today. I'm on my feet. My back doesn't hurt. Grateful that I have all the people here that were willing to help me, who helped me be here today. People who practice gratitude are healthier and happier, duh, and they live longer, period, no matter what condition you're in. And that's really important. And this movement that's happening around the world, it's taking palliative care, which is a pretty new subspecialty in medicine. It's taking it on this escalating path. And that's part of the hospice. Hospice is actually aggressive palliative care versus aggressive medical care. I don't even talk about money, but I'm going to now. We're spending 25% of our healthcare dollars in the last year of life for people. That's really doesn't make sense. We can't justify that. We have to have a better social sense of responsibility for that. We need stuff in school. Schools need computers. Kids need food. We've really got to be looking at the balance of this. And this worldwide social movement has taken another step. There are options now beyond palliative care and hospice. 5 states have legalized physician aid in dying, where a doctor won't be prosecuted for writing a prescription that a person can take themselves. That's Montana, Arizona, New Mexico, Oregon, Montana, Vermont, and New Mexico. And there are a lot of legislatures looking at these laws, and the overwhelming majority of people think they should be legal, where doctors don't get prosecuted. Terminal sedation. It's legal in every state. Tricky. You gotta have a good relationship with your doctor, the hospice. But also, there's a huge euthanasia movement going on now. That's never happened before, because we've identified enormous suffering at the end of life, and a lot of it can be diverted. We prepare, we plan, we talk to our loved ones, and we look about quality of death as a piece of our quality of life. Right? Now, you are all enjoying an amazing life now. I am. Sometimes I am so overwhelmed with how good my life is. Oh, it's true though. And being here, surrounded by people, you make friends here, right? You can't help it, you make friends here. It's good. And I know it's going to end one day. I hope it's a long way off from today. But I'm going to have a good lunch, and tonight I'm going to have a good glass of wine, and I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to email people I love. And I think our responsibility first is to ourselves, to maintain that good quality of life that we've worked so hard to live, to share that quality of life, and to work conscientiously to be interconnected more, to be interdependent, because like that branch supports the chrysalis, we support each other. And that's what's going to make the difference in the rest of our lives. I want to leave you with a quote from the poet Rumi. Life gives us 2 great gifts, love and death, and mostly they're passed on unopened. I encourage you to open these gifts. Be well, be happy, live long, and give each other lots of hugs and have a little dessert every day. Thank you.